Alrighty, welcome back. Hope you enjoyed the film. I'll bet you did. As always, if you have any specific questions about the action as it unfolded or anything about the film itself, hit me up anytime, any place. But what I hope that you gleaned from this 2-hour German experience was the major concept or theme of transition. Transition between differing political and economic systems, specifically in East versus West Berlin. But of course, it's reflective of Germany as a whole, and it's really greater reflective of a wider Europe. This is the big era of transition. The reason that we still kind of say, well, there's this East Europe and this West Europe, all of that was based on this Cold War era, reflected, I think, so concisely and tidily in a nice little story there in East Berlin. The other thing that I hope that you paid attention to and maybe got a sense of is that the Soviet system, while it did not win the Cold War and eventually unraveled and there is no more Soviet Union, ideologically, what I hope you picked up is that it's also wasn't a complete and utter failure enacted by a bunch of psychopathic losers. And what I mean by that is there's this concept, I think, in our society that, oh, well, the Soviet Union and that communism stuff, oh my gosh, it was just, a bunch of dictators at the top and a bunch of starving, meat-eating losers walking around in gray trench coats for decades. Not really. I mean, what you saw at the beginning of the film, and again, it was just in East Berlin, East Germany, but, you would have seen scenes like this across the Eastern Bloc and in Russia, is that, in the 1960s and 1970s, they were really at their technological and economic heights. These were industrialized places, modern cities, big cities, with all of the conveniences of the highest levels of civilization, if you want to call it, and technologically, big industrious places, but putting people in space, there was an era that you guys have never heard of where the Soviet Union was actually way ahead of the United States in space exploration, putting up satellites and things of that nature. So this isn't a pack of destitute losers with a terrible system for this entire Cold War. People were pretty upbeat. They were, again, modernized. People were employed. Kids were going to camp. There was a sense of community and progress, and that their system was really good, and it was more equal than the Western capitalist systems, which, while capitalism is awesome, there are winners and losers in capitalism. The whole Soviet experiment was pretty much trying to not have winners and losers in society, that it was, we're all in this together. And I think the film did a pretty good job of reflecting that at the beginning, is we're at the team. I mean, when Alex's father leaves his mother, what does his mother do? She gets ultra nationalist and ultra party supportive and out there doing community events. And you know what? That stuff looks pretty cool. Western society is kind of losing all that sense of community and that you are part of something bigger and that you should help out the neighborhood. We don't do that anymore. So this is a nice looking back at an era that was a little softer and kinder than history has given it credit for. Now, all of that technological innovation and modern society in East Berlin and East Germany and the Eastern Bloc as a whole, it all did, of course, come at this price of political repression, which is why people for the entire Cold War were trying to get the living hell out of the Eastern Bloc and out of Eastern Berlin, trying to escape to Western Berlin. There is, I think, maybe 300 or 400 people died trying to literally get over the wall. The fascist rampart. That's what's so ironic about it, is that they were saying, we're trying to keep the fascist Westerners out of our pure Eastern experiment, when the reality was that the government of the Soviet Union was much more dictatorship/fascist-like, and did not allow for freedom of expression or freedom of movement of its people, and therefore lots of people died trying to get the hell out of there, trying to get over into West Berlin, or trying to get across the border from East Germany to West Germany. And so people like Alex's father in the movie, I don't know, did you pick up those details that he bailed out with the intention on bringing his family with him, but then his mother got too scared to basically defect. Did you pick up those subtleties throughout the film? So there was always this tension between East and West Berlin, between Eastern and Western Europe. And again, it was always symbolically played out in Berlin because of this physical thing, the wall. So much so that maybe you know enough of your history to know that John F. Kennedy went to the wall like back in 1960 and made his famous speech of Ich bin eine Berliner, whatever the heck that means, basically saying, hey, all you people of Berlin, we stand with all of you, not just the ones in the West. We don't think this wall should be here. We don't like this ideological divide. Bruce Springsteen actually went to the wall. I think just like a year or two before it eventually fell, probably like 1988, Bruce Springsteen was invited into East Berlin and did a concert. You know, born in the USA, Bruce Springsteen did a concert, and he said, hey, I'm not a political guy, I'm a musician, I just want to play some rock and roll, but we love all you people, and hopefully all your governments will figure this out and there won't be a wall soon. And people were like, yeah! The East Berlin government did this in an effort because they knew they were losing their people. They knew ideologically they were losing their folks, that young people were dissatisfied, that their economy started to do not so well in the 70s and 80s, and that they were losing a whole generation of new people like Alex and his sister and all those folks depicted in the film who were just over it. So they allowed Bruce Springsteen to come in and play a rock concert thinking that would help make everything better, and of course it just made it worse because people were like, good, we want to see rock and roll, we want the wall to come down too. And then the most famous American visit to the Berlin Wall at the Brandenburg Gate was Ronald Reagan, who made his famous speech about the same time, I think, saying, Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall. Does any of this ring a bell? It all happened before you were born, but it's important stuff, and it all happened in Berlin. So all of these events are culminating, Bruce Springsteen and Reagan are culminating at a time where the Soviet Union, again, is starting to not do so good, economically starting to suck, starting to unravel, and people have been politically repressed this whole time saying, hey, we want out of here, we didn't vote for this system anyway, we'd like to be part of perhaps Team West. So this comes to a head, the things going on in the background that comes to a head in the film itself is that Hungary next door effectively disabled its border defenses with Austria and East Germany in August 1989. And when that happened, a whole bunch of East German tourists suddenly just started running from Austria into Hungary and then basically jumping over to Team West. So tens of thousands of people took off that way, and then the Soviets were like, whoa, and the East German government's like, well, okay, whoa, nobody can do that anymore. Hang on, what's going on here? That door got shut down. Then the USSR, as I said in the intro, started to slacken up its political hold on places like Poland and Hungary and saying, okay, you guys can, I guess, do whatever you want. And protests occurred there, and people started to say, good, we're going to vote ourselves out of the Soviet Union. And that initiated more protest in East Berlin, East Germany in general, but East Berlin, where people said, well, we want out too. If all these other Eastern European countries are jumping, we want to jump too. They referenced a guy named Erich Honecker, who was the East German politician, General Secretary of the Socialist Unity Party, who was basically the president of the GDR from 1971 right up to the fall of the wall. And they referenced him retiring. He came under so much pressure of not knowing what to do, and all these political protests are cropping up, that he bailed. October 18th of 1989, he jumped. He's like, fine, I'm out of here. Did you pick up that reference? Again, that was a real thing that really happened in real life. And you saw this people, Alex and his friends and other people doing street protests there at the beginning of the film. All of that's right around this time where all the crap's hitting the fan. And then it culminates with the fall of the Berlin Wall itself, where everybody kind of just gives up, and the East German government says, no, don't shoot anybody else who's trying to cross the wall. You know what? If East Germans want to go to West Germany, fine. If East Germans want to go to, if East Berliners want to go to West Berlin, fine. If East Germans want to go to West Germany, fine. We're not going to, basically they told their military, don't stop anybody anymore, let them go. And you saw that in the film too. Everybody's like, yay! It starts jumping over the wall, and there's a big party and stuff. So then by 13th of June 1990, the East German military officially began dismantling the wall. Okay, so November they just said the wall doesn't matter anymore. Officially in June they started to actually tear it down. It was like a year or two long process. It wasn't like it all just crumbled in one night because it was a formidable barrier. Pieces of it still exist, but it's getting few and far between of little sections that exist in lesser known parts of Berlin. And this all, of course, finished up 1st of July. East Germany adopted the West German currency. And did you pay attention to what happened to people's money? What was the exchange rate from the East German money whenever they were getting ready to unify and had to convert to West German money? Yeah, some people got screwed there. And, of course, this finished up at the fall of the wall, marked the first critical steps towards full German reunification, which happened on 3rd of October 1990, creating the Germany that you recognize and identify with today. This is, I believe, the only transition of its kind in modern history, in our current history for those of us that are alive. No other political entities have combined, to my knowledge, sovereign states combined. Mostly, since we've been alive, bigger states have ripped themselves apart into smaller states. That's been the major theme. So the USSR dismantles into 14 or 15 different sovereign states. Yugoslavia, a single state, dismantles into 5 or 6 or possibly 7 eventually states. So this East Germany and West Germany coming together into a single Germany, I believe, is pretty unique. I don't know of any other examples in the modern age. But here's the question, and I'll finish on this. Is it going to be the only one? Are there others coming? Could there be a North Korea and South Korea recombining into Korea? Because that's what it's been for most of history, is Korea. There's no difference between Koreans in the North and Koreans in the South. They're just Koreans. Much the same way that there was no East Germans versus West Germans. They're just Germans. These are political divisions. Are we going to see a unification there? Or are we possibly going to see a unification of parts of the old Soviet Union? Maybe Ukraine will be reunified with Russia. Now that's a hot button issue today, but maybe Belarus will reunify with Russia. Maybe Kazakhstan will reunify. We don't know, but it does seem that the German model is being looked at specifically for Korea, or maybe other parts of the planet are like, that hasn't been the trend, but maybe there are good reasons to reunify into a singular whole again. Anyway, that's just food for thought for the general world as you go forward in life and pay attention to current events. Hope you enjoyed this film. I think it was a delightful good time, a nice little historical piece that still holds up because it very well demonstrates what was happening at that very specific, crucial turning point in 20th century history for Germany, but again reflective of a crucial 20th century history for Europe as a whole. Hope you liked it, and party on, German style.